I remember I did this movie with Robert Zemeckis, and we sold this pitch to Warner Brothers. And so I would go have meetings with him, and he would tell me how he wrote Back to the Future.
How can a screenwriter make the distinction between a Hollywood-ready idea and one that isn't good enough?
Isn't good enough? Well, you know, it's interesting. I always, when I talk to people that are interested in my experience and what I have to offer, I always make it clear up front. Are you trying to write a movie that you want to sell to Hollywood, or are you trying to write a movie that perhaps is indie fare or something else? Because they're completely different animals. And while I have dabbled in indie fare, I did a little independent horror movie years and years ago. It is a world that I am not expert in, but I can tell you how and what you need to do to try and write a script that you will sell to Hollywood for a movie that will hopefully have a wide release in the theaters and be seen by millions of people. That's what I was drawn to, because as a kid, those are the movies I went to, and those are the movies that I'm inspired by, and those are the movies that I tend to write. And so the biggest component in those types of movies, and for people, one of the biggest mistakes I see young writers making is, I had a professor at film school who had a wonderful remark, which was, real life is no excuse for bad drama. And what he meant by that was that we all live our lives, and sometimes it's filled with, you know, dramatic moments and conflict and crazy stories and what have you. And because they happen to us, they feel particularly compelling, and we think the whole world is going to find this just as exciting and relatable and amazing and have their mind blown just as we were. But the reality is that more often than not, it's because they're our own personal story that they feel that way. And that more likely, where I think we should bring our authenticity into writing is because we listen to the way people talk and we observe and we see things in our own lives. You can bring all of that to your dialogue, to your characterizations. Maybe you know somebody that you want to bring out in a character, or the way somebody talked, or the way somebody dressed. All of that is great. But when it comes to that conceptual idea, I generally advocate that let's leave that one to the universe, to the gods. You know, go take your hike through the woods or your drive down the highway, listening to your music, and let that come to you. Let that big idea come to you. Be inspired by something. And then really test that out. Make sure that if you come up, and it's lightning in a bottle, admittedly. I mean, it's easier said than done. I mean, it's very difficult to sell a Hollywood screenplay, and part of the reason for that is that these ideas that are, you know, compelling to people really are lightning in a bottle sometimes. And so it should really wow you. It should stick with you. It should move you. I always say it should move you emotionally, and it should stimulate you intellectually. And if it doesn't, then move on. Just, you know, cast it aside or take something from it and keep going. But when you've got it and you finally arrived at a concept, that aha moment, it should be really simple, but really fresh. And at the same time, it should involve a character that's going through something primal. You know, I always try to bring back the idea that if I'm going to be, I remember I did this movie with Robert Zemeckis, and we sold this pitch to Warner Brothers. And so I would go have meetings with him, and he would tell me how he wrote Back to the Future, and one of the great screenplays of all time. And with him, his technique was very simple. He just said, and he was applying it to the script we were working on. He said, you just got to never let the air out of the balloon, right? So for 110 pages or whatever it is, you can never let the air out of the balloon. And what he means by that is that every scene has got to cause the next scene, which causes the next scene. There is no room for any flabby exposition. There's no room for any, you know, pretty casual discussions about the weather. That what really keeps a reader engaged and keeps audiences engaged is they feel like they're on a ride. And that could be a drama, a comedy, or an action thriller. It doesn't really matter. And so that to me is most easily achieved through a primal drive. So it's a mom that's that's trying to, rescue her child, or a man who's trying to save his beloved, whatever it is. But it's primal. It's the most basic thing that we can all relate to, caveman, mentality. And that way you have really simple stakes. The stakes are horrendous. Even a movie like say Deep Impact or Armageddon. Well, this is a very broad example, but the stakes couldn't be more clear. Everyone's gonna die, right? It's very primal. And so as you go off on this action adventure movie trying to create the means of blowing up the asteroid and saving humanity, those stakes they're not going anywhere. They're primal, they are big, and they are something we can all relate to. We can all imagine what it would be like to sit in horror wondering if our betters are going to solve the problem of the asteroid and save our lives, right? So it's that relatability of a big idea, the relatability of primal stakes and a primal journey that the main character is going on. And then for me, I'm always partial to a little bit of magic, I love to pose questions for which there are not exactly concrete answers. Because I think if we know the answers, we're so familiar with some sort of genre, story that's been told 1,000 times, we recognize it pretty quickly. And since we know the answer, then we're sort of impatiently just watching to see how you're going about getting us there. Whereas if you leave room that's why I tend to have, I think, written a lot of supernatural stuff, because I've been a bit of an agnostic a lot of my life, searching for answers. And that's the ultimate question, right? What happens after? And if you can sort of pose some questions and maybe suggest at some possible answers, but they're not certain and no one knows for sure, then it allows the audience to sort of put their own interpretation on things. It gets them questioning things themselves. And then now you suddenly engaged people because you're asking questions that don't necessarily have clear answers. So I find that to be sort of, when I'm writing, it helps drive me, because I myself am curious about what the ways those answers might manifest, and ways to playfully tease the audience and see if they can catch it and see what I'm trying to say.
And just as a side note, do you think Benji would have been successful today?
Well, it's funny because my former partner recently did a remake of it for Netflix, and I think it did pretty well. But the difference is, nowadays, it's on a streamer, and it's interesting because everything is sort of finding its place now, and certain genres are being relegated to streamers, and others are still having a theatrical. Like, for example, horror still is a leading theatrical release, and they will take that chance because there's example after example after example of sometimes even obscure indie horror movies that do big business, and because they can be made for a price, they work theatrically. And so you're still seeing theatrical work for horror. They're obviously still doing a lot of the comic book stuff, but that's starting to change. One of the things I was alluding to earlier that I'm excited about is streaming has created this massive data dump, right? And Netflix and Prime and everybody now has their algorithm. So before, they put all the pressure on us screenwriters to type fade out, go get a producer, go get a director, do a bunch of drafts for the director. Maybe a year's gone by and you're now trying to get an actor, a movie star on board. The movie stars already have a stack this high of $20 million offers. By the time they get to yours that's just asking them to attach, months go by. And you need about 10 of these offers to maybe get one. So you could take 2-3 years trying to put your script in a position that it's packaged to now take it to market. Whereas in the old days, as I was saying, it goes out on a Tuesday, I know on a Friday whether I've sold it or not. Now I have to do the work of the studio executive and put this whole thing together and hope that it comes together so I can try to sell it. And that has been the last few years. And it's been really sort of a difficult journey for writers to really find their way in, because it's been incumbent upon them to do so much more than they were ever asked to do. Well, that's changing now, because some of these packages were very expensive. So Netflix would spend a bunch of money on a big package, and then they, of course, would go make it right away, and it wouldn't do so well. But now they're doing cost cutting because all these streamers have been in growth mode. Now they're being forced to be profitable. It's time to show a profit, right? So they got to do some cost cutting. Well, what's happened is they have an algorithm now that tells them which star is best for their platform and what kind of movie that star should be in, right? So they don't want some package coming to them already laden down with movie stars and directors and whatnot when their algorithm tells them something different. They want to be able to control that now. So what's happening is, and it's been a nice surprise over the last several months, you're seeing spec scripts sell unencumbered, just the script itself. Because the streamers know, well, we're going to put our guy that is the algorithm tells us is the right guy or gal to go into this script. So it's kind of come full circle now that they want to put their fingerprints on things again and get back into the studio development business, which is great for writers because now we can start to just sell scripts again and don't have to do all that other legwork that took years.